Hello, my name is Alex Chow from AP Commerce. In this video, we'll go over how to create a quick extension by adding a new field to the page. There are basically three general steps that you need to follow. One is installing the Visual Studio Code and the AL extension, and I'll include a link in the video notes so you could just click on it. The second is adding the field to the page in the Sandbox environment, and the third is to start Visual Studio and copy and paste the code so we can publish the app into the production environment. Now the first step just requires you to install some software and sign up for the Sandbox. Those steps are pretty well laid out by Microsoft, so we'll jump directly into step 2, which is configuring the page in the Sandbox. Now, when you sign up for Business Central, you're allowed to have 3 Sandbox environments. When you're configuring and creating extensions, you can only do so from the Sandbox. So in this case, I'm just gonna select one of the Sandbox that I'm working with. So in this case, I'm gonna click on the SB Dev Test and go to the Sandbox itself. In this exercise, we'll be adding the payment method code onto the purchase order page. This field is on the purchase header table, but it's not available to be added to the page. So if I go to the purchase order, let's say I want to add the payment method code into the configuration using the personalization. If I click on add field, you'll see that the field is not available. In addition, it's not anywhere on the screen for me to see. The reason for this is because even though the field is available on the table, the field is not added onto the page. So we need to do that to create an extension to add this field onto the page so we can display it. So let's do that. I'm going to click on this gearbox and I'm going to click on design. Now I want to reiterate that the design functionality can only be accessed if you're in the Sandbox environment. You will not be able to do this if you're in the production environment. So I'm going to go ahead and add the field, and I'm going to actually scroll down to the area that I'm going to add the payment method code. I'm going to add it right after the payment terms code. So I'm going to search for the field, and I'm just going to drag it to where I want the field. When it's added to the screen, I could click on stop designing and it'll create extension. Now you could add additional fields that you want. Now for this case, I'm just going to add the payment method code, and then I'm going to click on stop designing, give it an extension name. I publish it, so I'm going to put my name down, and I'm going to highlight download code. When I click on save, it will create the code as a zip file in your download folder. This is the file that's been downloaded from Business Central. So I'm just gonna go ahead and extract this file. And the only 2 files that I really need from the source code is the .al code and the .json, the app.json. The last step is actually publishing the app into the production environment. To do so, we need to start our Visual Studio Code. The installation of Visual Studio Code and the AL extension is the step that you would have done in step 1. So once I started, the first thing I'm going to do is click on View, Command Palette, and click on AL Go. This is the directory in which you are saving your project. PO page. It's going to give you a list of versions you want to create the extension for. If you're using the cloud version, I would always recommend using the latest version to develop off of. It's going to be on the Cloud Sandbox. Okay, it's doing this thing. Now the first thing I want to make sure is that the environment name, it matches the name of your Sandbox environment. SB Dev Test. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste the code that's generated for us in the extension. So remember, we were saying that all we need is the app.json. So I'm just going to click on this, copy, go back to my Visual Studio, delete all this and paste it, and the .al code. Now by default, when you go to AL code, it creates this hello world.al. You don't really need it. So instead of deleting and creating a new file, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rename it. I'm going to copy and paste the code. Highlight everything and just replace it. You notice after I paste it, there's going to be a bunch of errors that comes up. Going back to the app.json, there is an important field here called ID ranges. These ID ranges are basic object ID that this extension is going to reserve. Internally, you should have a good record keeping of what the ID ranges are, and you also need to work with your partner to find out what object ranges you can develop your solutions in. So in this case, since I'm only going to create one object extension, I'm going to give it, so my object ID can only exist from 89800 to 99000. On my AL code, my ID needs to fall within that range. Now you notice after I change it, it's still going to give me errors. That's because the app.json file has not been saved. So I'm just going to save this, save launch, and you'll notice that the error message will go away. Lastly, I am going to click on Command Palette, Package. When the file is done packaging, it's going to create the .app file. Let's go to the folder where we have the file where we saved our project in Visual Studio. I'm going to take this app file and I'm going to upload it into the production environment. Right now, we're all working in the Sandbox environment. I'm going to click on Production, go into my production environment. I'm going to click on Manage, Upload Extension, select the app file that you just created. And disclaimer, make sure you accept that and click on Deploy. Gonna click OK. If I refresh this page, so the installation looks like it's been published successfully. Now if I go to my purchase order in my production environment, I should see the payment method code.